Hi and hello, Rami. Welcome to this Ruby Mountain YouTube conversation. For those listening, I invited special guest Rami Zor today to talk about a speciality he has in relation to one of the trails of Ruby Mountain. So on the Ruby Mountain course series, for those who have looked at it, for those who haven't looked at it, there are 7 trails. Each trail has a dynamic theme that's very important to life. The first trail is the unseen worlds, the second trail, natural laws, and it goes on like that. The fourth trail is human qualities. And when I thought about this trail, I thought this subject that we're going to be talking about today really is in and out and round about human qualities. And I thought about Rami. I've known Rami more as an acquaintance for some years. I know what he does a little bit, and I thought it'd be wonderful to have him here to talk about this speciality, which is storytelling. And so welcome, Rami, and maybe I can ask you to say a few things about yourself to kick off.
Oh, thank you. It's really great to be here. I deal with storytelling. I counted back, and I am dealing with storytelling already 35 years,
Wow.
even a bit more. Yeah, it's strange. It's like life. You look in the mirror, suddenly say, who is this old man? And years are growing up. So in this case, it is experience. I am part of a very special storytellers group, which are called the Ring of Turquoise, and our symbol is a dragon that keep all the time the heat or the warmth of the treasures, so it won't get cool. You know, it sit on all the treasures, but it keep it warm. And the treasures are human qualities. And we are international. I am from Israel. We have storytellers from Israel, from England, from Netherlands, from United States of America, from Finland and from Sweden. And we meet each week already for many years on the Zoom and diving direct into not so much only the stories, much more into what build a story, what stories are important, and what will be good to leave behind because it's not needed anymore for the human journey.
And what is it that you said 35 years ago you were attracted to this area? Do you remember, was it a moment or was it a gradual?
No, it was a moment. It was a moment I remember very much, not very poetic, but I've been in a theater group that was preparing a performance of dance, and they brought a professional dance trainer. And we were about 60 people, and we were stretching to the left, to the right, and I felt my back. And they kept stretching, and I hated it. I hated it so much that in the first chance, I said that I'm very thirsty, went out and disappeared. Outside, I met few more refugees from this process. Now, the guy who was conducting the whole thing came and said, oh, so you don't like to dance. What shall we do with you? I have an idea. Let's go into storytelling. We were few going into a small room, and as he opened his mouth, I felt the magic, and I fell in love.
Wow.
And since there, I don't dance, but I tell stories.
Yeah. If it's told well, it's a different type of dance too, doesn't it? Because it passes something, doesn't it? It passes something. And coming up to this call, I mean, I've had some engagement with storytelling groups, and the people I work with in the Ruby Mountain, stories naturally come into it. In fact, the more you think about stories, they come into everything. I was just at the vet today. I was telling you earlier, I was at the vet. We got a sick cat. And the vet's telling me a story about the last sick cat. And, it was like a 10-minute story. And in the reception, there was a man who has 35 cats. And he's telling the story of there's this cat and there's that cat and how they get on and how they don't get on. And because I had this conversation that we're going to have on my mind, I was thinking, humans are always revolving and rotating around stories. So it's a feature, but of course the person doesn't stop at the end and say the moral of that story about the sick cat. They kind of just move on, Whereas stories in the past, there used to be this classic thing of there's a treasure somehow in the story, like you said about the dragon. There's a treasure. Let's look for the treasure now. We didn't just move on,
Yeah. It's. I think you are touching a few important things. First of all, storytelling is the most natural thing. Everyone can become a storyteller. Not everyone can play on a trumpet, for example. I do, by the way, and it's very hard. It kills my lips. But everyone can be a storyteller because the vocal cords are activated from 1 year, more or less. And the other thing is that it's very natural. And the third thing, that if I would have to explain what is a story, I would say a story is another word for as an example. So you are going to the vet and he has many cats. I say, as an example, just yesterday I had the cat, he was that big and he was scratching, and the story comes.
Can you say those three again? I didn't quite catch the second one. So the first thing was?
Wow, I forgot, but I'll try to recall it. Everyone can tell a story.
Everyone can tell a story.
And stories are very natural.
Very nice.
And if I have to write in the Wikipedia what is a story, it will be giving an example.
Right.
Because we live today in the world that is very academic. And at least half of our brain needs stories. Yeah, the right one.
Yeah.
Needs stories. He can't live with facts and numbers. The other side enjoy it. So the few who like numbers, etc., took over the science and we are captured in their hands. But if you go, for example, to TED, which is very popular, if they don't come with a story, they are dead. So sooner or later, they will have to bring an example or a story. And this is where it is gluing. Story has a glue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, the first thing that, your first point, everybody can tell a story because of the vocal cords. Everybody can talk. As soon as you've done anything, you've got a story to tell, right? But a lot of people wouldn't think of themselves as storytellers. If you suddenly had a few people around a campfire and you said, right, who's got a story? I think people would sort of jump to, do I have some sort of, recorded classic story? So it is something that seems to be like there's a bit of a gap there on a person, how they think about it, that they could develop it for themselves and get better at telling a story. Some people, I remember there was a guy in New Zealand when I was there, he could tell us, it could be the simplest thing that happened, but somehow about the way he told this little life experience, it was captivating. It felt like the most important thing, that day. But it was often quite a simple thing. So there's a mystery in that. Somehow a good storyteller, because you can tell stories, but then you can be a good storyteller.
Yes.
You can somehow cause you like a bit of a magic smoke around you both, so that you're just totally lost in that story.
Yes, I think you are touching the core, because everyone can tell stories. Does everyone can tell a good story? What do we mean when we say a good story? Yeah. Should we sit at the edge of our chair? Is this a good story? Not for me. For me, I think it touches the aspect of qualities or the internal vitamins. Now, if we look on each word as a capsules that holds energy inside, And the moment the word is said, the energy is dispensing. And so is a whole sentence, and so is a whole story. The question in the end, what is passing? Now, some people can be a great storytellers of very low qualities. And some of them can be vampires, you know, emotional vampires. They tell the story, and in the end you just want to run away. They did it very well, but you are finishing with all their problems, which was passing fantastically.
Right.
So what kind a storyteller in the Ring of Turquoise asks himself, what kind of qualities do I want to enhance in the world?
Yeah.
And this filter already take many stories and put it to the side. Because, you know, our brain is really attracted to horror movies and action movies, but you wouldn't like to wake up and find yourself in the middle of such a scenario. And before children go to sleep, nobody tells them a horror movie. It's much more natural to charge them with the right kind of qualities and essences. And this is different than a Hollywood storyteller that need to produce the unbelievable great stories. And we are into the non-unbelievable great stories, but those who are close to our life so much that when I tell about how I went to the supermarket and what happened there, it will be in such a way that you will sit and say, wow, this is a good story. This is what the New Zealand guy did. He was connected.
Yeah, it seems to touch on something that we sort of know but don't talk about or think about, which is we are collectors of like jewels, quality jewels. You know, you can. Here's a little story. This story is about a woman who was interviewed, and she was already quite old in her, into her old age, and she was famous for something. I can't remember what, and it doesn't matter to the story. But because she was asked what really impacted your life, what was something really impacting in your life, and she told a story. She said, when I was a little girl, me and my sister would receive like 10 pence from our mother once a week, and we would immediately run down to the local lolly shop and would go in, and they had this, like for a lot of us, we had this experience, this sort of plastic or glass cabinet, and you had all these little 5 of these for 1 pence, or a big one for 2 pence, and all these different colored sweets and lollies. And they would spend like half an hour to spend their 10 pence. And there was an old man standing behind the counter, and he would patiently fill up their bag, and they would change their mind. They go, no, we want 3 pennies worth of that one, and he would empty them out and start all over again until they were completely satisfied. The theater of doing it was a joy for them. And they finally got their bag, and they ran down to the local park and under a tree and ate their treasure. And she said, you know what? I don't know what that man's name is, but I'm forever thankful for the patience he had with 2 little girls who were in the theater like that, of the joy of the discovery of what they wanted to eat. And he could have shown them patience. He could have been, he could have pressed us to make a decision. But when I grew up and I met the rest of the world and how impatient people are, I've always thought back to that man and thanked him in my mind for the care and patience that he extended to 2 little girls.
Wow. What a beautiful story. Because I'm sure that the taste of those candies had an extra value, like putting another aspect which is much more humane into it. Yes, and the fact that she managed to recognize that there is patience there, I think it can savor millions of training of being patient, because already it was passing. And by this, I think it speaks about how stories can help evolution or growth. And sometimes the right story in the right time does the magic. I once met a real estate person, and I asked her, a very successful one, she's selling for millions of dollars here and millions of them. I asked her, what is the first principle of real estate? Now, she didn't even hesitate. She answered like this, and she said, location, location, location. And I was impressed by how quick she reacted. Later, I realized it's right. Everything, the location, the direction, the seas there, everything counts. So what will be, in this context, the first principle for storytelling? And the answer that I came is relevancy, 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 which means it should be relevant to the other person, because it's alive. So it's not that I'm coming with a stock of stories, but something cause to remember what maybe another person exactly needs. And part of the art of being a storyteller is to listen to stories. Many times people tells me, you are a storyteller. You must listen to this story. You must hear it. And I train myself into the art of listening, which is a joy by itself, the moment that rather than waiting impatient to my turn, I like it so much that most of the time when I deal with story, I only hear them. And then one or two questions promote more. So storytelling is actually human relation and promotion.
Yeah. And you would have been quite within your rights to say, listen, I said I'm a storyteller, not a story listener. You could.
Yes.
I'm joking. But yeah, and how many people do have an incredible story to tell? I mean, we pass people on the street. They might look a bit miserable. They might look a bit like nothing much is going on. But most people, if you sit down with them and you get to know them, even the general story of their life, but there can be specific things too. There's amazing, magic, extraordinary things they've overcome, things they've had to develop to rise to a circumstance. There's things that are wow, and we don't actually often get to share those stories. Unfortunately, even people that with other people we know, we don't often get that circumstance of sharing the story. And sometimes it's because we don't sort of formulate it in our own mind as a story, so it kind of gets lost in the mists of life. But actually, if we stop and think about certain things you've done or what other people have done that they've told you about, you can often reflect back to a person as well. I had it with my mum. She's like 88 years old, and she was telling me, we're talking about some things of her life, and I think it's a very nice thing to do for a person who's getting to that age, to say, well, when you moved to Australia, when you moved to New Zealand from Australia, that took a lot of courage. That was not an easy thing to do, because it can just come out of the mouth. I moved to Australia, or I moved to New Zealand.
Yes.
So what I'm saying, I guess, is looking for stories, but also looking for the quality and bringing it out and polishing it and saying there's an amazing quality. Because they often haven't seen it themselves.
Yes. So you touch the aspect of service. Listening to someone else is a service.
Right.
This is why it's such a humanity thing. And allowing another person to discover importances in his own life or her own life that they didn't know. Not necessarily big importance, but important importances, like the lollipop, which is connected to such a thing as patient, which is huge.
Yeah.
So let me answer with a small demonstration and story. Now, whenever we tell story, we ring the bell before and in the end after as well, because it helps to go into the mode of storytelling rather than explanation. So I explain something, but then I start the story. So there is this man who is walking next to a quarry, a place where they cut stones. I hope my English is good enough or understood. And he sees three people are sitting, sweating, full of dust, and each one is carving out blocks of stone. He goes to the first person and say, "What are you doing?" And the person say, "I'm a prisoner for 20 years and I have to cut those bricks out." Then he goes to the other person and say, "What are you doing?" Say, "Well, I am trying to build my house and it is cheaper to carve it out, so I cut it out." And then he goes to the third one and say, "Why are you carving the stone out?" And the man says, "I am taking out stones in order to build the temple." So the reason will have in it a certain force and power that will motivate us. And if we manage to find, let's say, the permanent aspect or the high aspect of a person, I would say his own personal religious drive, we are touching something big. But the three of them wouldn't know it if not somebody wouldn't come and ask, "Why do you do what you do?" And then whoop, it's released out. One has to do it because otherwise he won't get food. The other save money for the family. The third one for something much more divine. So yes, when speaking with people, my personal task is try to reach those internal moments that are to do, well, let's say, with the human story. And here it's not about big moments like I was in the boat and there was a huge storm and I was moving from side to side and the crocodile was here and the shark was here. No, not that kind of story, because stories like this happens twice a lifetime. It's much more the small, many points that are to do with what we extract out of life. And here I want to address something that for me is like a motto, like the idea. And I heard a wise person tells one, suggesting to store to yourself large quality of good times, good memories, and values. To store, storytelling, to store. So we are training ourselves to detect them, to store them, and to have access to it. At that time that, let's say, in time of depression, I find this line of the great moments I had in life, the live moment I had in life, and manage to elevate above to what the flux of life allow us.
Yes, very nice. And I think it's very important what you're saying there, Rami, about small moments.
Yep.
And it's very interesting because life itself is a kind of chain of moments, right? You could say each moment leads to another. It's kind of like a sequence, a chain. And also our own DNA and the genetic storyline of the human race, it's all chains and lines and threads that move into the future. So there's something very resonant that stories and telling stories, it's like chords of a guitar. If you can resonate a story the right way, it's going to resonate with that going forward along those chords, along those threads. And it is easy to think in life that you're waiting for something to happen, the crocodile story, as you said, or, obviously people are wanting some marvelous story to occur, they want to go on vacation, so they'll tell the story of when I was there or when I was over in this beautiful country or whatever. But as you say, it happens occasionally, a big story like that. And fine, if it's a big story and it's inspirational, fine. But there's an art, isn't there, to seeing life in such a way that something that could be missed, you see it, and you can see the quality in it, and it becomes a story that stores a quality, and then you can tell that story another time. But even if, whether you're telling it or not, you start building all these threads inside yourself.
Yeah.
It's curious that the word store, I hadn't seen that connection with store and story, but thinking about it now, the word tor is also an old word for a tower. In Latin and in Portuguese, it's a tower. So the more of these that you collect, you start building a tower.
The tower of stories. So it goes direct to values, because a story can be like one-time story and that's it. If I realize that something happened, and it happened to me, that I'm going somewhere, something happens to me, and I ask myself, what's the significance of it? What is the significance? We've been now in a storytelling festival in Wales.
Yes.
And in the third night, we had a performance. And as I went, I met another person who was telling a story, his stories a day before. And that guy, as we were walking, I never spoke with him because we were parallel, and I didn't know the guy, he's from Wales. He asked me, what kind of stories do you tell? And this is like it took maybe 15 seconds, the whole encounter. Now, what happened I could forget, but I remembered it. So he would expect that I will say, well, I'm telling biblical stories, I'm telling adventure stories, I tell religious stories. And to his amazement and my amazement, I opened my mouth, and what I was saying was, I tell any kind of stories, any kind, as long it has significance, as long it has values in it, and as long it has the wonder about life. And I kept going, and he was stuck behind trying to figure out what did I say, because it's much larger than a section of storytelling.
Right.
But this is really what motivates us in the Ring of Turquoise, to find those things that are worthwhile keeping. Because some stories, like, for example, the last time you've been with the dentist, you don't want to relive it again and again and again, especially we didn't have the anesthesia. You don't want to remember it. So, and some people like to recycle their problems, yes? Does it add anything? Here we try to find those things that can elevate. And this can jump from a person to person, and this, I think, why the soul inside like to listen to stories, because it gets through it a vitamin for one's person's own existence.
Yeah, and there's something inside this, I think it's important to say as well, which is, if you got a story, and let's say it's somebody else's story, like the lady with the sweets and her sister and the old man.
Yeah.
Later, she realized and she appreciated the patience of that man. I heard that story, and I was affected, touched by the fact that she was touched by the power of patience, how affecting it actually is. But if it stops there as well, that's also a kind of a pity, right? So what is the next step? The next step is to go, okay, that was her story, but she's passed to me now a jewel. What to do to bring this forward, and not just say, oh, that was good for her. That is very important. End of story. When
Okay.
that phrase isn't the end of story, but it's not the end of the story because the jewel is
No,
passed on. There's
that's right.
there's a journey of the jewel.
So we are going to the first principle of storytelling: relevancy, relevancy, relevancy. How relevant is it for my life? Now, if it's external, I'll say, wow, a very nice story about patience, and I will forget it. But if my life actually needs patience, and I realize it, and I'm ready to develop into it, then the story starts to be like a lighthouse in the darkness.
Mm.
And it flickers and say, there is patience here, you can walk with more patience. And the essence of patience will discover itself to me in an unexpected ways. But I'm aware about the fact that patience is something that will improve my life. And this is a question, how relevant is it? And it goes back to what kind of story do I tell? So let's say you're listening to a storytelling in the radio for a whole hour. One story touches you. This is where your life are open at that moment, and this is why it touches us. And yes, we can get stories of others or our own stories as well. For example, I can give an example. Now I'm going to personal story. So far is things I heard from others. Good bell, by the way, has at least 7 seconds of resonating. Not good bell goes bop. So it goes like this. 1982, June. I remember the time, it was in the summer, I think it was the 15th of June 1982. I've been on a very small, narrow beach in an island called Corfu in Greece, which is in between Italy and Greece, beautiful island. A lot of olive groves, green olive groves from above, and then there was a cliff, very narrow shore, and on this shore all kind of young people of my age, 25, 20, 26, all those young who like to gather where adults are not there. We've been there, and the time didn't exist. There was the morning, then the sun went up till the noon, then it went down, and it was the opposite of any kind of working with a clock. And we have been there, more or less. And I started to be friends, I became friended with few other young people like me. Now between them there were 2 English people. One day we are sitting on the sand toward the end of the day, doing basically nothing like we did the days before. And then from far away we see a man is coming toward us, and from time to time he's stopping, going down, taking something, putting into a small plastic bag, and keeps going. And again, collecting something, another something. As he came close, he was one of those who lived on the beach. Now one of the English people called him, he knew him, say, "Simon!" I have the story till today, it's called Simon. "Simon, what are you doing?" In a bit mocking way. And Simon says, "I'm cleaning the beach." I say, "Why should you do something like this?" And Simon says, "Because I like to sleep on a clean beach." And then I said, "I like to leave every place I'm coming to a bit cleaner than before I met it." Now it was a timing. The timing was such that there was a quietness between us. Whatever he said went in. The next day, Simon already left because people were staying few days and going. But the next day in the afternoon, not one, 4 people are walking with plastic bag, starting to cleaning all the cigarettes that were left there and the small sticks and whatever. 4 people. A day after, another person joined. Then I left. Now, if nothing changed, till today, probably there is a tradition that it will continue. What caught me, or most of all, was not the fact that he cleaned the beach, but he said, I like a place to be a little bit better than when I left it. He didn't say, I'm going now to clean the whole beach, just a little bit better. Years later, I thought that he had the wisdom for the whole human race. Because each generation, today it's the other story, but if each generation will clean a bit better, not only the physical planet, but let's say the way between people, the way of honesty and so on, a little bit more for the next generation, this planet still has a chance.
Yes. Yes. And I'm thinking of Russian dolls because there's stories within stories, isn't there? There's Simon's story, there's your story, there's the guy you were with, and there's the story of that place. And many stories are like this. There's a meeting of different elements that produces another story. It's not one story. It's the meeting of things that makes stories so special. And that is a special story. And it shows also that the other things that can be in, I mean, there's qualities in that story. So there's always qualities. But sometimes a quality seems to have this partnership with a principle, which is an attitude with, like you said, I want to leave a situation better than I found it. I was thinking the last few days, because a lot of people are concerned about the state of the world and problems, and it's easy to go down that track. It's difficult to go down that track too, by the way. But I was thinking, how important it is to make a decision, to want to, when you meet people, to try to find something light or bright or something, a moment of humor or something. So you leave that situation a bit lighter and brighter than you found it, and be not that you're making people a project of your own, but you would want that you in the exchange things become lighter somehow in the sense of encouraging, inspirational, humor. That you would want to have that effect into the world and help other people. That sometimes a smile, sometimes a wink, sometimes a comment is enough to lift us back out of a certain zone. And again, it's the meeting of different threads. Because I think in the end we have to decide what kind of overall type of story I'm telling with my life.
And there are many, but this is exactly when I start to store to myself large quantity of good times, moment, and values. Now this is a value, and this value is important for me, and it helps other people, I believe, to connect, especially young people, to connect to the value of cleanliness. And it goes into why being clean is so important. So it starts to be because we don't like people who are not clean physically. Something is rejected from it. And we don't like people who are dirty mind as well. Or people who are manipulative. And you feel that something is not clean. And then when looking on young children playing, they're absolutely clean because they don't have yet agendas. They don't have yet, how should I sell you something, or like something like this. And I believe when two clean people are together, there is a celebration that can happen between what lives in one person's cleanliness and the other person's cleanliness in terms of care and in terms of love and in terms of even standards toward the world or attitude, things that they will not do. And I have stories about how I managed to improve my standards toward life because of meeting with another person. This is one of them, by the way.
Sure.
I have now, by the way, everything I didn't prepare, it just comes to me. Once okay, another story. Sorry, I'm on the move. Now remember the theater group, the one that everyone was dancing, and we were the refugees, started to be storytellers. So one day, one of the people, they opened an inquiry, and the inquiry was like this. You are driving on the road with a car, and a worm, a rain worm, a small worm is passing the road. What will you do? People say, who sees even, keep going. Say, okay, you're driving on the road and a small cat is passing. What will you do? So people say, well, if I see it, I will stop. Hey, what about a dog? I will stop. What about a human? I will stop. And then the question is, why? Why do you stop to a cat? Why do you stop to a dog? Now the point is, it was almost Zen Buddhistic. He didn't answer the question. Now this was wise because I was asking myself, why do I actually stop when there is a dog on the road, providing nobody is behind me? I need to be not naive, but... And one day I discovered why. Now the moment I discovered why, it intensed the reason to do it. By the way, in this way I saved a dog that was wounded on the road. Took me time to stop, going back with reverse, and this dog lived with us at least 14 years later. But I realize here in Israel there are many turtles that are walking on the road, and turtles are walking really slow. And as I was going by, I realized I want to help them. Why do I want to help them? Because of what that person told me. Why is it important? And then I realized why. And it's to do with responsibility of us as humans. Because what I came to understand, that animals are perfectly living in their environment, on the ground, on the trees, but these highways is made of, I don't know how you call it, asphalt, how do you call it?
Asphalt, yeah.
Asphalt, they are cut away from the planet and they are lost there. This is human domain. So at least it is my responsibility as representative of the human race to help them to pass to the other side. The first turtle took me 300 meters, say, okay, next time. The second turtle, I saw him and the responsibility jumped to me. I stopped and ran back. Today I see them from far away. I stop, take the turtle who is moving his leg in the air and put it to the other side, and they can run quick when they want to. But it doesn't stop here, because I discovered I'm not the only one. Somehow it caught fire without speaking about it, and other people do the same. They stop, take the turtle to the other side, and keep going. Now, this is an example of improving one's own standard, connection to the world, and what I can contribute to it. Even if it's very small, just passing turtles from one side of the road to the other.
Yes. Yeah, and again, it resonates with something, and it's just like a good story. There's a moment, it rings like a bell, that there's something in what the guy asked and there's something in that action that resonates with the quality of care, doesn't it? And kindness, care and kindness, and wanting things to be right and wanting things to be better. There's a kind of formula I came across in looking at stories, which is, there's always a kind of normal things are well scenario, and then there's some sort of challenge. There's something not right, something bad might happen, or there might be some difficulty, and this is a kind of classic story formula. And then the hero or heroine has to find the quality. They have to find it in themselves. You get these expressions, curious expressions in English, like you had to find it in yourself to stop the car and help the turtle. It's not that easy. I mean, because this is the point. We're talking about something that facilitates something that's not that easy, which is to actually grow these qualities. And sometimes a story is kind of like a coat hanger. It helps you find that shirt again. It helps you find that quality of care. It encapsulates it and makes it like the story of patience. If I just say, I need patience, it doesn't somehow bring me back to the essence of it. But that story does bring me back to the essence of it and the importance of it.
And it may remind you a similar story that you go through, and this is why people are ignited, because suddenly it reminds them exactly the same thing, and a chain of experience is appearing.
Yes, and in the end, the story of a person's life, when when they gather around you and they put you in the final little box and fare you well. They tell stories of you. Hopefully, they may do, and the stories are going to be stories that have qualities in them. They're not going to just tell the story that has no quality in it. So the whole of our life is a kind of gathering of stories and the living of a story, but inside the story are qualities, and then going back to that formula, you find it in yourself. And the person in the story, the hero or heroine, gets over the problem. They beat the villain or whatever it is. They do what they have to do. And as a result, the impression is either things have come back to normal as they should be, or things have improved. And there are two longings in us. We do want things to be right. Like you want the child to be safe when he sleeps at night. You want to tuck him. Maybe you've told him a story and he's gone. And we long for things to improve.
Yes. I thought many years, exactly as you said, and then I discovered another layer. There is no need for a drama to have a story, like something is wrong and getting back right. Sometimes it can be just a special moment that appears in front of me and I capture it. Right. I didn't have to fight for it before anything else. Although the only fight is to be aware about. Now I'll try to give you an example about it. I'm going to ring the bell again. I have two children, and both of them once were young, because the difference of something like 1.5 years between the daughter who is older and the child who is younger. And having little children at home is not like having adult people at home. Totally different. They are so intensive and going into so many dramas and out of dramas. But the magic, there is a magic. And the magic is what happens after they fall asleep. And I think almost everyone will tell you this, that if you are entering a room of a sleeping little child, there is a sense that he or she are not alone. There is a certain atmosphere of something I will call angelic. There is a certain grace that is all the time there when they are sleeping, almost felt. And I realized it few times that after they fall asleep, I come very quiet into the room and I stay there. And I never left unless I felt the angelic. I started to be more aware about this angelic thing and using it to send the best that I can to their futuristic growth. Night after night, doesn't matter how tired I was, I would do it. First of all, as an adult, to go to their attended room and feel all those angels or fairies and consciously sending them my best for their growth. The reason I say it is sometimes we are lucky to meet something that is high, special, without fight or anything, only tuning in. So I think part of the stories is not only a certain struggle, but some are only tuning, that the door get open at that moment and something can reveal itself.
Yes, certainly. Yes, certainly. There's a growth still in that. There's a growth of things becoming better. Doesn't need to be a difficult growth, doesn't need to be a painful battle. Those are the classic stories, aren't they? The epic of
Exactly.
There's another thread in this I'd like to just mention because we don't have much more time, and that is how I think it is good. Just as we're talking, I'm thinking about all the peoples around the earth that have treasured stories, and stories were a pulsating part. In fact, the storyteller was often one of the most respected people in the village or the town. For thousands of years before books. I mean, God bless books, right? Books are amazing because they tell stories. It's an encapsulated story. But at the same time, we paid a price for books, because as soon as you've got a book, you don't have that person standing there, and they may be telling a story, but they're telling a story that came from an experience. And because it came from an experience, there's a pulsating life force. And when they tell the story, that force comes to the person. So you get the story and the essence.
Yeah.
The danger, the problem with books, God bless them, we all love books, is that you may not connect to that essence feature. You may do, or you may not do. But it's not quite the same thing. Now you've got cinema, and I remember a couple of years ago, I won't ring the bell, it's not that big a story. It's a tiny little moment in the bathroom after a movie that had all these special effects, and two boys talking to each other, like teenage, 14, 15, saying, what a boring movie. They were not impressed by all these. I thought it was actually pretty cool. There's amazing special effects. They weren't impressed because they weren't touched. Nothing transferred. So it became kind of two-dimensional, like the screen is a two-dimensional, like a book page is two-dimensional. But if you've got somebody in front of you telling a story and looking in your eyes, something can arc across. And that's how it was in Africa and Ireland, the bards of old Ireland and the troubadours and all these people and around the world. People would gather, and there would be the stories, and there was interactive, and children were there, the adults were there, and attitudes and qualities and feelings were preserved in that family line and that tribal line because of the storytelling process.
Yeah, I think you're touching the tribal aspect, and what goes with it is ecology as well. Because the ability to concentrate or be with a story today is impossible. The rhythm of life today is ta 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 ta, where once it was once upon a time, and people would go into the ecology, into the atmosphere. Today, every atmosphere is dispersed. unless two people are stuck in an elevator for 5 hours and they have nowhere to go, in the 5th hour, something can be built in terms of that will transfer. So yes, in the past, this magic happened. Again, depends on the quality. And there is a lot of lost art in the world. Barding art. I know in Wales, by the way, they are doing barding yearly meetings. They have it, and they have the atmosphere for it. There is this man, Georgy Ivanovich Gurdjieff, and he tells that his father was an ashok. He was like a traditional storyteller. Right. And they remember as a child that he was telling from memory, long hours, like 7 days and nights, the story of Gilgamesh, the local Samson or Hercules. Years passed, and then in the 40s, I don't remember when, 20s, 30s, in Iraq, it was found in the sand the certain written Sumeric writings on a stone, which was the story of Gilgamesh, and it was translated. And he says to his amazement, what was written 5,000 to 4,000 years ago, almost word by word, his father told the story. Now, it goes into many questions, like what allows it to be so exact generation after generation after generation? Number two, what is the essence of it? Number three, we live in time which is different. Is Gilgamesh still important for our time? I tried to read the story, very impressive, with Hubaba and all the fights, but it was, those essences are not relevant anymore for me. So either I can become, try to revive it, or what we do, asking ourselves, what are the stories that are important for the now and the future? Because something has changed. It's not again and again the same kind of generation after generation. Something is changed. And I think the Ruby Mountain is touching it as well, about the new things that are coming. So in a way, we try to work into what is important in the now. And this is quite a delicate way trying to find it. And just to tell you the last thing, we developed an exercise. We did it actually in a storytelling festival we conducted in Winey4, which is 2 questions and a story. I would like to try it with you. If it won't work, delete it from the recording. But this is something that a storyteller can do. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, which will be closed questions. Closed question is yes or no, something like this. And then the third question will try to promote a story, right? Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this will be the way what happens naturally when people meet. So I say, where are you from? And I think you are from?
New Zealand.
No, currently, where do you live?
I live in Brazil.
Brazil, okay. And how many years are you in Brazil?
Good question. 26 years.
Okay, so these were 2 close questions. Now the open question, I say in advance, but usually it sounds very normal. Okay, so we are 20-something years in Brazil. Can you recall a special moment with Brazil, with the nature of Brazil, with the influences of Brazil that you encounter during this time? A moment, if you can find a moment.
Yeah, very different process. Yeah. So it really was meeting Brazil for the first time because somebody was supposed to pick me up at the airport, and that didn't happen. So I was in that kind of wandering around the airport trying to use phones to find this person. But an airport, like anywhere, airports around the world, they can be a little bit different painting, but it was basically got that international mix of energies. And that's right. In the end, I left the airport to get a taxi to go somewhere. The moment those doors opened up and I stepped out of the airport atmosphere, the heat and the smell and the energy of Brazil hit me like kind of walking into the moving path of an elephant on the run. It impacted this heat, this like thorough heat, because in New Zealand we don't have it. This mix of fragrances and this feeling of this land, this other land, this rich atmosphere, and it all hit at once. It's a bit like taking a deep smell of something, but it was the three things at the same time. And I felt like I just dropped from somewhere else into this big vat of something special, and it's very special. So yeah, good exercise.
Yeah, thank you. Now, if we would continue to speak, I will be managed to get stories you didn't know even you had inside. And the point is that it's genuinely interesting for me, because we are interested about what experience in life did you get. And now only this story helps me, and not next time I will be in Brazil. Actually, I've never been there. And I wonder now, when did you how many years did pass till you started to get used? Like you found yourself already part of Brazil.
Yeah, I think it was following the law of seven. It really was about 7 years.
7 years. Yeah. 7 years. Yes.
There was a moment when I suddenly looked around and I thought, I understand these people now. I got you. Because for 7 years I was totally baffled by what makes Brazilians tick. I'm still totally baffled by what makes them tick, but I understood that. I understood the forces that move them. I don't understand those forces, but I understand the feeling of them and what makes people move and laugh and not laugh. And it took 7 years.
Yes.
So we really need to live to be 1,000 years old, like biblical times, to go from culture to culture if we really ever wanted to know this planet, I believe. But
yes.
That's the answer, 7 years. And it was a moment. Yeah.
Well, though this is kind of normal conversation between people, that through this we can extract stories that may have importance in it, may have value in it, and learning in it. And actually, as you spoke, I started to feel the doom, doom, the Brazilian rhythm.
You heard the distant drum. You heard the drums.
Yes, the chakadangam, all these things that are totally different than European 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Totally different thing.
Yeah, but I see the exercise and the importance of the way we ask questions can open up the doorway to an amazing story. Yes. And if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to open that doorway. So that's a very interesting understanding.
Yes. So this is the art of promoting.
Promoting, right?
Yes. So when I meet a person, I try to promote, because for me, I'm absolutely interested in what lives inside the person. Not only the outside, but what makes him tick. Like I say, what makes them tick? What makes a person tick? What is their experience? Because I believe that all humans, we have something to give to each other. We have something of value to someone else. So I melt as quick as possible. I melt the differences or the barriers in order to go into what lives in. And stories are the best way.
Yeah, yeah. And I just before we wind up, there's a there's something you said earlier which I think is very important to kind of put on the table again, which is often the story is about something. It doesn't need to be overly dramatic or explosive or amazing. And I'd like to share one more little story before we wind up. It's a very, very subtle but very, very impacting. So here we go. There was it's based on a true story, but I'm not quite sure on the details. So it's a little bit, the essential part will come across. And that is that a family had to escape their home country because of a sudden war. And they didn't have time to pack much. It was one of those grab things and get out the door and get on a boat and heading to safer lands. And the story is told from the eyes of the little girl who only had time to grab like a dress and her teddy bear. Teddy. The name of the teddy bear, appropriately enough, was Teddy.
Teddy.
So that's okay. So she's got teddy bear, and it's like a little source of comfort. But they had some choppy seas. They had some rough seas, and unfortunately, she dropped Teddy, and Teddy slid along the deck and fell into the ocean. And the little girl was devastated because the one thing she had taken, she didn't have anymore. She'd already lost so much. Now, a couple of days later, an officer from the ship came to the cabin and said, "I have a letter for Joanna." And everybody's stopping and looking, and she got this letter, and she opens up the letter, and it's from Teddy. And Teddy's saying, "Hello, Joanna. I just want to let you know that I was picked up by another boat, and they're taking care of me. I'm with another little girl. She's not as nice as you, but I'm safe and dry. Don't worry. And I hope everybody's well."
Wow.
Something like this. And she went running to her brother, who's like 2 years older, and she's reading the story over and over, and she's imagining what's happening with Teddy now, and she's asking him questions. What do you think? What do you think's going on now with Teddy? And she's back. And a few days later, another letter, and Teddy started to tell her his adventures in his new life. So they arrive, and the family arrives to shore, and they start building a new life. And for 2 or 3 years, these letters would come quite regularly from Teddy, until one day they stopped. And she went to her older brother and said, "What, you think Teddy's all right? I don't get any more letters. You think he's all right? I'm worried about him." And the older brother said, "Why do you still do this, Joanna? You've worked out by now that it's me sending those letters."
Wow.
And Joanna said, "I know, but I didn't want it to stop." And the thing in that story is so moving is,
yes,
it didn't cost much. Kindness doesn't cost much normally. It just needs a little bit of thinking, a little bit of concerning for another, a little bit of effort, and you can cause something that for the rest of her life she will be.
Yes.
It's a treasure in her life for the rest of her life, and it didn't cost much. A bit of paper and a pen, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of consideration, and we can create amazing stories. With a little bit of creativity, a little bit of wanting other people's lives to be feeling a bit better.
Yes.
So,
yes, a beautiful story, many aspects to it. One of it that hope can be maintained, although our realistic side says the bear is already somewhere on the bottom of the ocean, and it goes into what we call imagination, because I think about her, she liked to get the letters, and she doesn't mind that her brother writes it, because something passing through the letter, certain essences.
yes.
Now, for 6 years, every night when my children went to sleep, I had to tell them a story. I had to. They were in the same bed. I had to tell them a story, then each one moved to her on his bed and went to sleep. And sometimes I told stories from my life and my childhood, and sometimes I was reading to them stories. But then I realized that I can't do it anymore. And one day I said, this is the last story. It was actually Dr. Dolittle, Adventures in Hebrew. So I'm telling the story, and each time we're getting closer and closer, and say, that's it tonight, children, is the last time that you hear a story. From tomorrow, you know already how to read. You will read by yourself the stories. They didn't like it, but they had to accept it. Few weeks later, one of them came to me and told me, you know, from the day that you stopped telling us stories, we fall asleep differently. Before, it was like magic, falling asleep safely. Now we have to work how to fall asleep.
Mm.
So many things can pass, including the magic, including the safety, including the cover, and what we call imagination, that on its wings is carrying so many things that are vital for our soul and other parts. It's all in those stories.
Yeah. We're going to have to wind up. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and it feels like we caught a few threads of a big tapestry. But is there anything you'd like to say? Somebody's been listening, they're feeling inspired about stories. Is there anything you'd like to share to somebody who's like, where to start, what to start thinking of doing that they might want to?
Okay. Good question. Just before, we have a website which is called Ring of Turquoise. One word, Ring of Turquoise. Took me time to write in English turquoise, all kind of letters there. ringofturquoise.org, O-R-G.
Right.
Now, in the time of the corona, you remember the corona? There were two things. One was so-called epidemic, and the other one was a serious epidemic, the epidemic of fear. This everyone was caught by. So at that time, and we had enough time because nobody went anywhere, we were recording few stories and for people to listen to, and they are in that website.
Oh, good.
In order to overcome fear, to give more positive aspects when everyone is trembling because of the huge monster that is somewhere that never appeared in the end, but the fear was tangible. Everyone was so concerned, so we had to react. So ringofturquoise.org, and we can contact there. Now, let's say a person wants to be with more richness of stories in his life. What my suggestion is to capture moments, even if they don't understand it, and write it, like the brown bread of this morning, just as a memory, and start to go into what is the significance of it. What does it say? Now, sometimes the answer is immediately, sometimes after a few days, but I turn the experience in life into something that is deeper and long-lasting. And this, we call it the blue balls of life. It's a story by itself that one day need to be told about the blue magic balls in the forest. This starting to find one's own small moments in life and write it down. In the beginning it will be hard, but as it continue, more and more of the life, the grid start to get smaller and more is caught in even smaller fishes. So this is what I can suggest for the life of each one who want to find their own story.
Very nice. I think I would add to that start to see things in terms of stories. So let's say we use the bell today. And
Yep.
it's just so easy to see the bell and go, that's a bell. But there's a story that led to this bell being here. Somebody made it. Somebody had the idea. It was crafted. There's a story to do with bells, going back to church bells. And a friend of mine saw a monk in Japan walking through a shopping center, and he would ring a little bell before he took every step. So there's a whole journey of stories to do with bells. So it's not looking at things singularly and flat, but that whatever we're seeing around us is the end of a story or part of an ongoing story, including ourselves, including the creation, including the planet. We've been dropped into a story, we're contributing to the story, and if we start seeing things in terms of where they are in the story, it adds a richness to life. And I want to thank you very much, Rami. It was amazing to open up. It feels like we did a bit of a magic carpet loop around in the sky. Much more in it, I feel, but I think we took a few steps into the magic cabin and saw some important things.
Yes, it felt as well for me, Colin. Thank you, because I felt it's very alive. As should be between people. Yes, it was a pleasure for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll say goodbye to whoever's watching, possibly, and we'll talk a little bit more.
By the way, I trained myself to do it like the Queen. The chin a bit up, and you do like this, everyone immediately react to you. Try it in the street. Yes, I will say goodbye.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.